Hello, everyone, and welcome to Decoding Ancient History, Understanding the Language of Antiquity. An ancient artifact has been interpreted, deciphered, and decoded. The artifact contains multi-layered messages of a metaphysical, spiritual, and technical nature. This artifact of great antiquity reads like a book in stone, a book that can be equated to a technical or engineering manual in stone. Having interpreted, deciphered, and decoded this particular artifact, I am curious as to whether or not certain individuals can bring unique perspectives to this endeavor and contribute to a broader discussion. Previously, in the video trailer for Part 3, I posed a couple of questions with regard to the appearance of an unidentified entity that made its presence known in my life. After having ingested iboga root bark in the summer of 1998, it would be 6 months later, in the early winter of 1999, that I would begin intuiting the presence of something or someone that would ultimately begin establishing a form of intuitive communication with me. Prior to my having taken the iboga root bark, I had never had such an experience. As I reflect back upon this situation, there are a couple of questions that arise. In my having ingested the iboga root bark, number one, did I inadvertently awaken some dormant part of myself that I wasn't consciously aware of? Or number two, is it possible that iboga represented the emergence of a spiritual teacher making themselves available to assist me in the navigations of my spiritual journey? Or is something more sinister going on? The reason why I am posing this set of questions is because since my having ingested iboga, I have observed and experienced strange activity within my perceptive field. It is as if I crossed some invisible line of demarcation within the hourglass sands of time and space, an invisible threshold where whoever or whatever that lay beyond some perceived boundary still isn't quite clear. Since that time in the early winter of 1999, when the presence of an unknown entity asked me whether or not I was ready to get into my boat, I found myself writing a book entitled The Book of a Moon, Nomad, The Journey of the Soul, in addition to learning about concepts related to symbolism and numerology, as well as the study of ancient history, the occult, and the esoteric sciences. Now, on the one hand, I have gained much knowledge and wisdom over the years as it relates to this hyperdimensional school of study, if you will. On the other hand, and at the same time, I am also dealing with the dark forces of spiritual warfare that seem hell-bent on impeding my spiritual progress. When I reflect upon my life of experience thus far, I have pondered the following questions. Was my soul's purpose activated or initialized when I reached a certain point on my spiritual path? Did the ingestion of iboga root bark play a part in me awakening to my soul's purpose? Did I accomplish the interpretation of this petroglyph in a previous lifetime prior to this current incarnation? And finally, in my writing The Book of a Moon, Nomad, The Journey of the Soul, there is a point within the book where I write about being propelled forward in time to a hypothetical future in order to document the effects of the war upon the soul. If by any stretch of the imagination that were true, is it possible that I am walking the reanimation of this path, sort of like a pre-programmed path of predestination? It's a curious thing, because if you will recall, it was in 2016 where I felt like I had received a hyperdimensional download of information related to this petroglyph, and that everything that I had learned and was taught up to this point in time was now being applied to this stone tablet. Having said that, is it possible that I may have been an adept or an initiate within the mystery schools of ancient knowledge and ancient wisdom? Or is it possible that I am walking a path of spiritual initiation, something like the spiritual path of the initiate. As it relates to a possible path of predestination, I do in fact wonder whether or not I have been here before in a previous lifetime. I say this because in my having incarnated this time around and again, it would appear that in some instances that I am repeating certain sequences of activity that I have already accomplished. This can only happen if I have in fact been here before. So, what exactly do I mean by that? Well, as I stated earlier, there are times when I feel like a student within a hyperdimensional school or classroom of instruction, and that I am being taught from within the spirit by the presence of a spiritual teacher, if you will. I say this because between 2010 and 2018, I lived in 3 separate apartment communities. In each of the communities where I previously lived, it is each apartment and the structure of each apartment building that I lived in that was used as the basis to teach, instruct, and to convey knowledge and information as it relates to some of the concepts that I have illustrated within this petroglyph. So, for example, between 2010 and 2012, I lived in an apartment community by the name of Woodland Greens Apartments. I lived in a 2-story building comprised of 4 apartment units where each unit was numbered as 16, 15, 14, and 13. I happened to live on the 2nd floor of this building in apartment number 14. Within the hyperdimensional classroom of spiritual instruction, the apartment numbers were used to convey concepts related to the 5th elemental atom of Hiram and the divine principles of numerology in their application to the tree of life. The structure of this apartment building was used to convey concepts related to the cross, the square, and the cube. Within the master bedroom of my apartment was a set of double-door closets separated by a narrow portion of wall. This closet configuration was used to convey concepts related to the central column of the tree of life and the principle of duality. During the time that I lived in this apartment, there were 2 children and their parents that lived in the apartment beneath me. The children used to run across the length of the apartment into the master bedroom and bounce what sounded like a ball upon the middle strip of the wall that separated the double door closet. Whenever the ball would hit the middle strip of the wall, I would be reminded of concepts related to the tree of life. As it relates to symbolism, the configuration of this double door closet is also symbolic of the spiritual doorways within. If you will recall the video trailers for Part 2 and Part 3 of this video series, Matthew LaCroix, in his interview with Alex Ferrari, speaks at great length about concepts related to the aspect of duality and the triptych doorways. Between 2012 and 2013, I moved to an apartment community by the name of Autumn Ridge Apartments. I lived in a 3-story, multi-unit building which was comprised of 9 apartment units. Unit numbers 102, 103, and 104 were located on the 1st level. Unit numbers 202, 203, and 204 were located on the 2nd level, and unit numbers 302, 303, and 304 were located on the 3rd level. I happened to live on the 2nd floor of this building in apartment number 203. The apartment numbers for this community were used to convey concepts related to the 5th elemental atom of Hiram, the portal tripod, and the divine principles of numerology in their application to the tree of life. The structure of this apartment building was used to convey concepts related to the cross and the 5th elemental atom of Hiram. Between 2013 and 2018, I moved to an apartment community by the name of Hall Tree Apartments. I lived in a 3-story, multi-unit building which was comprised of 12 apartment units. In building number 1, unit numbers 101, 102, 103, and 104 were located on the 1st level. Unit numbers 201, 202, 203, and 204 were located on the second level, and unit numbers 301, 302, 303, and 304 were located on the third level. I happen to live on the third floor of this building in apartment number 301. Both the apartment numbers and the structural configuration of the apartment buildings for this community were used to expand upon additional numerical concepts related to the cycles of the universal calendar and the divine principles of numerology in their application to the tree of life. The entire apartment complex was used to convey concepts related to the configuration of the sacred temple of the universal consciousness, the temple of man, and the inner construction of various churches and ancient temples around the world. Having demonstrated how 3 different apartment communities located several miles from one another were used as a basis for learning concepts that I ultimately applied in the interpretation of this petroglyph, is it just me, or is it simply coincidence that something like this could occur? Hence, the name of the last apartment complex, for example, Hall Tree Apartments. Sounds to me like a blend of the Hall of Records, the Halls of Amenti, and the Tree of Life. Hall Tree. It makes me wonder whether the interpretation of this petroglyph is alluding to the existence of a hidden structure. Moving right along, it would be over the course of several years that I would find myself spontaneously being moved to create and draw 2 specific structures. One diagram of illustration consisted of me creating and drawing a structure that can be compared to the temple of man. Another diagram of illustration consisted of a series of 14 concentric circles, like wheels within wheels, which ultimately wound up looking like a record album. I would later come to learn that what I had been creating was something that can be compared to the wheel of Anima Mundi. There came a particular time on my spiritual path where I received intuitive instruction to begin labeling and defining each concentric circle with a specific year. In so doing, I was instructed to begin with the year 1998, the same year when I began my spiritual journey of the soul. So, beginning with the innermost circle, I applied the numerical label of 1998 to this circle, and I would continue in numerical sequence by applying the years to each successive circle in sequence until I reached the outermost circle of the 14th sphere. When it came to the year 2012, I was instructed to draw a line from the center of the spheres and to label its extension beyond the spherical boundary with the year 2012. Additional details related to Scorpio, Ophiuchus, and Sagittarius emerged at this time, and I was instructed to create labels for each of them and place them at specific positions within the boundary. As this petroglyph reveals the emergence of a sphere from within a construct of concentric circles, let's listen to Billy Carson in an interview with Danny Jones, where he describes the construct of our universal dimension as being a holographic sphere or a spherical light matrix that exists within the shadow of a higher dimension.
We know now that we are all immersed, fully immersed, inside of a matrix of light. And it goes deeper than that. Where did this matrix come from? Where is it being broadcast from? Scientists in a laboratory discovered how to make an 8th-dimensional quasi-crystal. And then they pointed this quasi-crystal in a particular angle, which cast down a 4th-dimensional quasi-crystal. And when they put that in a particular angle, it created a sphere. And that sphere is what we're living in, a sphere of light matrix. We're living in the shadow of a higher dimension, not a shadow of a dark shadow, but a shadow of light from a higher dimension. That's where we're located. And this dimension that we're in, this universe that we're in that's made of this fractal holographic light, it is probably not base reality at all. We're probably not even close to base reality. 14 students at a university created a game called No Man's Sky.
Yes.
80 quadrillion worlds in this program, unlimited life forms, and the game never ends. They were talking recently about, what if we inject AI into this software? That's on one DVD. You put AI in there, now these beings are alive. Hey, who made us? Where did we come from? Who's our God? When does the Big Bang start? The Big Bang is when we turn on the console. So now all of a sudden we're creating universes. And so will be the Sims. The Sims will be conscious with AI. The Sims are going to create programs and software within the program. And then they're going to create a universe. I think that there's many layers to reality. And I don't think we're close to base. I think that we're just one of Google's of actual simulations that are running simultaneously.
In another reference to a spherical construct, Darius J. Wright, in an interview with Alex Ferrari, describes what it's like to view the construct of our reality from God's point of view.
These other
Yes.
constructs that you were seeing, first of all,
Mhm.
what is the environment that you're in? Are you in a dark void with literally like things on a shelf kind of vibe, or is it just kind of like they're kind of everywhere in this dark void, or is it light? What does it look like being outside of this construct?
Well, what I was the place that I was in when I was outside of the construct had like it's like this golden. I have an image that I share all the time to show people, but it's hard to explain without actually seeing it. But I don't know if you want me to bring that up at all.
If you have it right now, can you bring it up?
Yeah, I have it right now. I'll just share
If
this
you-
one
Just
image.
share this image. I'd like to see what it looks like.
So yeah, so this is the image to best illustrate when you're outside of the construct of what it looks like, what I was showing when you're outside of this particular construct that contains 12 realms. Now, as you see here, right, you see where the individuals are standing, right? Like they're standing, viewing the construct from the outside. That's what it's like. The souls are massive, right? And the puddles on the floor, things like that are all different constructs. It's just, I just said constructs stacked on God's shelves, but this is the best image that I could share to illustrate what I was showing. Now, what exists outside of all of this, you could say this space is the void, the black space, right? And the void, the black space is you could say the beginning of all things, if there ever was a beginning, but it's the point where all things are created from. So when individuals think that light is first, right? Light is always secondary because light is birthed from the black space, right? Even when you go into religious texts as well, God created the firmament, created this earthly realm experience, right? He said, let there be light. Light was secondary. Even when you close your eyes right now, you're inside the void. And when you start to imagine something, you birth the light in creation, birth the light into creation, right? So light is always secondary from the void from the beginning, right? And then you access here, which is all of the different, you could say, constructs, realms, spaces for the soul to delight in its senses and experiences, right?
During the course of the interview, Darius shares an image of the spherical construct and goes on to describe in great detail what it is like to view the containment from an external position of perspective. As Darius makes reference to the golden hue of light that can be seen within the outer environment surrounding the construct, what I found interesting is both Billy and Darius' explanation for the source of the light. Although their explanations appear to differ, what you come to realize is that they are actually saying the same thing, just in slightly different ways. Let's listen once again to Billy and Darius' description of the light and compare their explanations.
We know now that we are all immersed, fully immersed, inside of a matrix of light. And it goes deeper than that. Where did this matrix come from? Where is it being broadcast from? Scientists in a laboratory discovered how to make an 8th-dimensional quasi-crystal. And then they pointed this quasi-crystal in a particular angle, which cast down a 4th-dimensional quasi-crystal. And when they put that in a particular angle, it created a sphere. And that sphere is what we're living in, a sphere of light matrix. We're living in the shadow of a higher dimension, not a shadow of a dark shadow, but a shadow of light from a higher dimension. That's where we're located. And this dimension that we're in, this universe that we're in that's made of this fractal holographic light, it is probably not base reality at all. We're probably not even close to base reality.
This space is the void, the black space, right? And the void, the black space is you could say the beginning of all things, if there ever was a beginning, but it's the point where all things are created from. So when individuals think that light is first, right? Light is always secondary because light is birthed from the black space, right? Even when you go into religious texts as well, God created the firmament, created this earthly realm experience, right? He said, let there be light. Light was secondary. Even when you close your eyes right now, you're inside the void. And when you start to imagine something, you birth the light in creation, birth the light into creation, right? So light is always secondary from the void from the beginning, right?
Where Billy describes an experiment related to an 8-dimensional quasi-crystal, which in turn creates a 4th-dimensional quasi-crystal that produces the spherical matrix of light that we exist within. Darius describes the existence of the void as the beginning of all things and the source from which the light of creation is made manifest. What is interesting to note here is that according to the information that has been interpreted, deciphered, and decoded from within this petroglyph, what the three of us have in common is the construct of a sphere which defines the containment of our physical existence. To learn more about concepts related to the construct of the spherical boundary and the birthing of the sphere, I invite viewers to watch Part 5, Subpart 1 of Ancient Messages in Stone, Decoding the Assyrian Tree of Life. Well, that's it for this video. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to be notified when we post new videos. Until next time.